Hello, and again this is a video for the Level 1, Level 2 School Link learners on the BTEC Tech Award at Persham Road, College Cambria. Now this video picks up on the second part of the task with regard drawings. We have created a couple of 3D models. We created this one and this one in the first video. So now what we have to do is create drawings from them. We're going to start with a nice easy one, which is this one. And if I go up to the very top left, there is a down arrow here that gives me the options of assembly, drawing, part and presentation. Part is what we're already on, that's the 3D model. Drawing allows us to create a 2D drawing, that's what we're going to do. And assembly is when you need to put together several parts to make a product. And a presentation allows us to animate that and allows us to move things around. So the top and bottom aren't really applicable to the assignment you're doing. So we're just going to go to drawing. Clicking on drawing should, and it will take a little moment on my laptop, it's a bit slow and you might find the same, will bring up a drawing space, and we're just going to use a standard template. We're not going to worry about any fancy things on it, we're just going to do an absolute basic. So it'll be just as it comes up. Okay, and when it finally comes up it looks like this. Down in the bottom we have a rather standard text box. Now here it says drawn, and that is the person it's drawn by. Mine says MTC because my laptop is called MTC. You might well have a parent name or some other name there. We'll worry about changing that in a little moment. Yeah, but we don't really need to. We can put the information we need out somewhere else. It has a drawing number, revision, the scale, sheet 1 of 1, which yours will remain as, an empty block up here. We're going to worry about filling all that in a moment. The first thing we have to do is actually start to put the drawing down. Now there are two drawing conventions that you can use, first or third angle, but for this I'm just going to show you how to lay out when you need 2 drawings and lay out when you need 3 for the second drawing, and you will choose one or the other as is applicable. Generally for a round object only 2 drawings are needed. If I right click my mouse it gives me all of this. Most of this we're not going to use right now, but we are going to use base view. Now I want not the side of my object but the top of it, and I'm going to place it up here. I'm going to try and place it in a way that I can put measurements above, to the sides and below. Don't, whatever you do, left or right click while you're doing this, because you will just put up random drawings. So moving in line to the right hand side, I'm going to put a second view. And then I'm going to go at an angle and I'm going to get a funny view down here. And we're not going to worry about the placement for a time being. You can change the scale here so that it becomes quite small, way too big to fit on the page, and you can just find the one that's right for you. Okay, hitting OK, it will ask me to save the part, so I'm going to save it, and I'm going to put gate valve handle 1 and save. Okay, take a few seconds to save, and up comes all of the drawings that you've just placed. Now this one and this one are okay. We can make some revisions to them in a minute, but this one I don't like the picture particularly. It's supposed to be a 3D picture, so it should be rendered, coloured in if you prefer, and I'm just going to play a little bit with the orientation of it, just because I think that looks a little bit better. Now I can leave it that size, or I can independently change it now to a different size. As it's a rendered image, just a guide 3D picture, it doesn't have to be the same scale as the rest. Now notice I've moved it to there and changed the scale, but I haven't rendered it. So I'm going to click on here, and this button here where it says shaded, if I press that and then OK, it is now a rendered image. Now that's not actually made of steel, and there's a reason that's not made of steel. I haven't told it it's made of steel. So I'm going to go to gate valve handle 1, which is this one here. I'm going to go up to tools. I'm going to push the down arrow under materials, change default, which is just a default generic, to steel on the list. Now there's a few steels you can actually choose from. Yeah, you've got plain steel, cast steel, polished steel, and blue steel. Oh, and galvanized if you want it as well. I'm actually going to go for polished. Okay, now does that look a little more steelish on the 3D image? Yeah, you can see the lighting effects changing as we move it around. Okay, so if I now go to the drawing, if I now save that, yeah, and go to the drawing's been updated, look, and now that has a steel effect. You don't need to do that, it's just a nicety. Now, on this particular drawing I have a couple of options. Can you see all these lines going through? These lines for some people are a little bit confusing, for others they're not. Depends on what we want to do. But I'm going to take them away, and they are this, hidden lines. So if I press on that, if I press on the one next to it, which is hidden line removed, away they go. So it's a nice plain simple drawing now. Okay, so now we can see it in a little bit of detail, but we can't actually make it because we don't have any of the sizes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to annotate, and I'm going to first of all select this tool here, which is center mark. Any circle needs a center mark. I'm going to click on these four here, and I'm also going to click on this one here. Now this one automatically gives me the center for this mark. If I didn't have a circular edge, then I would have to put the center mark in. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select dimension. Now I have two options here. I can either go onto this list and change to default millimeters, and I have to do that every time I reselect, or before I select, if I press escape and come out of there, I can go to Tools, Document Settings, and change to Default Standard and see millimeters. Now, every time I go click on Dimension, it will automatically be in millimeters, and I won't have to do anything. So I'm going to click on there, and that gives me a 6 millimeter. Okay, I'm going to also go up to the top here, and I'm going to select this rounding that we did. Now if I select the green dot, it won't actually give me the mark. The green dot is a point-to-point thing. This will give me the size. So now it tells me that's the radius of 0.5. However, do I want to mark all the 0.5 radii? No. I'm going to do something a lot easier, and I'm just going to type TYP. Means typical. So what it's telling the person looking at the drawing is everything that looks like a 0.5 radius is in fact a 0.5 radius. The next thing I'm going to do now, that's as many dimensions as I could get on that. I could tell it, if I wanted to, that is 50 millimeters. Yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to use this one instead and say that this radius, or diameter in this case, is 50 millimeters. I'm also going to select this one and bring it down, and I can bring it in line pretty much. Now this one is 14 in diameter, but again so are the other three. So TYP. Typical. Okay, so that's telling the viewer that that looks like that, looks like that, looks like that, so it is typical, it is normal. A little bit further on we need a radius for this one, and we can pull that all the way down and perhaps put it somewhere like here. Got them all in a nice neat row then. That's not typical because that's the only one. So we can move on a little bit now, and this here is that dimension of 6, and I can press OK, and coincidentally this is also a dimension of 6. Now that's one way I could do it. I've put 6 here and I've put 6 here. The second way I could do it is not to have this dimension, so I'm just going to delete it. I'm just going to go into this one and do a slight edit, and up here I have a picture that says square. So if I put that on the end, it now says that box in the center is 6mm square. So I've only got one dimension now cluttering the drawing. Either way is acceptable, but the latter one's just a little easier to view and doesn't clutter the drawing as much. So now I need to know where one of these circles, and they're all set the same if you remember the drawing, so I just need to know where one of these circles is. So I'm going to pop a dimension from the center to center, and that says 12.5mm. Yeah, but again, they're all 12.5mm, so I'm going to write typical. Yeah. Now I could have done this as a PCD, pitch circle diameter. Yeah. I don't need to do that because this is simpler, okay, and more than acceptable for the course you're doing. All right. Do we now know that every single one of those is in line and 12.5mm? We do indeed. So that is the minimum number of measurements I can get away with for this particular drawing. What I also need to do is give it some information. Now the scale is 5:1, it's done that automatically for me. It's done the date, it's done my name, but your name might not be correct. So in this box here, I'm going to put in with a simple text exactly what the title is. So I can change the text size up here. Yeah, so we could go for large text if we want. So gate, valve, handle 1. Let's be consistent. And you can see that fills that box rather nicely. The second bit of text I'm going to put in up here is asked for, and that is a general tolerance. Yes. Now, the general tolerance is a little bit of a strange one. We can type in +1mm and -2mm if we wanted to, but plus or minus 1mm. And if I go onto this little box here and press the down arrow, you'll find at the top here there is a plus or minus symbol for us because it's used quite a lot. 1mm. Okay. Is there anything else we need on this? Well, yes, I don't necessarily know it's your name. So I'm going to put in this box here name, and in the box next to it you're going to put your name. Okay, don't be afraid to go into 2 lines if you need to. Now, do we have a drawing number? Right now we don't, so I'm just going to give it drawing number 1. Okay, and that would be a complete drawing. So from that I can now export that as a PDF, which is the best way for you to be able to use it in your assignment. So export PDF. It's going to ask you for a name, which can be exactly the same. So there we go. So that's a simple drawing with only 2 parts and 2 sides required. Okay. This one might be a little bit more complicated. This one might require 4. So I'm going to do exactly the same again. I'm going to start by opening a drawing. Once I've got that drawing, right click, base view. I'm going to put my base up. Now I don't actually like the way that's lying, because that will allow it to fit on the page a little bit better. We can perhaps increase the size. Now this time I'm going to put 2 elevations and my 3D image, just the same as we did before. I'm going to hit OK. So this time it's gate, valve, handle 2. Save. Up come my pictures again. Now again, I don't really want these images rendered, and because I left it switched on last time, it's automatically taken those settings, so I'm going to have to turn it off. And there's my pictures. Again, not keen on this particular elevation and the way it looks, so I'm just going to do something slightly different with it. There we go. Again, I can change the size if I want to. I think that one's a bit small though, so let's pop it up to that size. But it's nice and out of the way of my drawing. Now, with this one, I might have a slight problem, and in anticipation of that, I'm going to just move it down a little bit. And the problem is that these will have centers, these curves, and they're going to be over here somewhere. So I've given space to find it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go on to annotate, center, and this time this circle has the same center still. Yeah. So I'm going to use that to get it. I'm also going to have to add the rest of that there. Yeah. So that tells me that this circle and this circle have the same center. What about this one? Well, it's all the way up there. And this one, well, it's all the way over here. Okay, so that's a little bit more awkward, but at least we've got the points. Yeah, I'm still going to have to move it down ever so slightly to get those 2 points in. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is select dimensions. I'm going to give this a dimension, and notice it goes straight to the point. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give this one a dimension, and notice it does the same as well, only I'm going to bring this out here. Why? Well, because I can, and it's out of my way a little bit. Okay, might move that later, don't know. I'm going to give this one a dimension. Now I could do it from the center if I go that side, but on this one we already know it's from the center, so we can just do that there. Okay, again we need to dimension this center box. So, and I haven't changed the settings, I've just realized that. So all of these dimensions I'm going to have to delete and do again. Brilliant. How many times do you think we make that mistake? Quite often. So what was the problem? I didn't go to Tools, Document Settings, change it to millimeters because it thinks it's American, and then we'll do it all over again. Just take a few seconds though. So first of all, we did this one, and then we did this one, and then we did this one, and now I'm going to do this one. Only remember what we did on this one. To save space, we said box or square. Yeah? And then this final one in here, radius of 3.25. Okay? Now, some of those are quite easy now. We know where the center of this circle is. We know on the drawing where the center of this circle is, but the only real reference point we have is this middle piece. So I'm going to click on here and here, and I'm going to give it a dimension. So perhaps the best place to give it a dimension is up here. Similarly with this one, notice that this is offset from here, so I'm going to go here and here, and I'm going to tell it the distance apart. Firstly, the height, and secondly, pressed on the wrong place, secondly, the width. Now this width is quite a small one, so I can just pop it in there for now. Okay. Now notice the drawing is getting a little bit more messy than the other one was, and there's not a lot we can do about that. Again, though, we need to do a couple of other things. We need to maybe have an overall width of this. We need to maybe have an overall height of this, because now they're different, unlike when we had the circle. But on one of these two, I also need to specify what the depth of the material is. So I'm just going to pop that in there. Now, can I do anything to tidy all this up? Well, if I press escape a couple of times, you'll notice that the dimensions and the highlights. Excuse me. So this one's okay, it's nice and out of the way. This one's a little bit scrappy, it's a little bit in the way. So perhaps what we should do is click on that and move it somewhere else. Now we could have it directly vertical. That would make sense to me. Yeah. Or we could put it somewhere like here or here where it's out the way, and if I slide my mouse up and down, it will actually allow me to move the measurement, and I'm just going to slot that in there. Okay, so this one from here to here, that's probably okay as it is, just maybe a little bit low, so I'm just going to slide it up slightly. I'm just going to, for neatness, put it in line with that 45mm there. Okay, so now I know where the centre of this circle is, and I know its diameter. I know it's 1.71 millimeters from the centre across to the left, and I know it is 57.89 millimeters directly up. I also know where the centre of this one is, because it is 65 millimeters to the centre, and it is 35.86. Oh no, hang on a minute. Now I've checked that, I know how wide it is, I don't know how high it is, so I should really give it a height measurement as well. Oh, it helps if you press dimension. There to there. So now I know it's 29.12. Everything is referenced to this very centre, so it's easy to find. Yeah, we have one datum point. Again, I need to now go down into here, text, gate valve handle 2. Now this time I've left the text a bit smaller. Oh dear. Just to keep it in line with the other one, I should increase the size. So I'm just going to highlight it, change it to 6.1, press OK, and then I'm going to put another bit of text up here, which was general tolerance. And if you remember this, now it's set because it's the last symbol I used, 1 millimeter. Now there's a slight problem with this drawing and the other one. Do we know what it's made of? Well, on this drawing, we turned it to steel, but does that actually tell us anything? Do we know it's steel? This one, it's just a generic default. So what we need to do is slot underneath here what the material is. Material steel. Okay. And what we should really do is pop back to the other one and do exactly the same, because nobody told it what this one was either. So when we come to make it, we could make it out of brass, we could make it out of aluminium, we could make it out of all sorts of things if we don't specify what the material is. Now in a real world you probably also specify the grade and the stock material that it comes from, but we don't need to do that just for this. Okay, so gate valve handle 2, what are we missing on this one? Well, we're missing name. And the person who did this was indeed our friend Fred Colson. Okay, so now this is a more complicated drawing, and the more items and the more curves and the more parts you put onto it, the more complicated it gets, the more dimensions will be there, and the more things you have to remember. But you should remember quite simply that if everything is referenced to this center, then we only need a dimension for this one. We need to tell it that it's 6 millimeter box or 6 millimeter square for the square in it. You need to then reference everything else to that center, and anything else that is from that center that is not already referenced, as this one is going to need a height and a width, and a height and a width. They're also, when they're curves, going to need a diameter. So make sure and check that everything that you need is there. The final thing you can do when you've done that is File, Export, PDF. Gate valve handle 2 is automatically there. Press OK. Now this will allow you to simply place this into your assignment. Now you can place it in as a PDF, or you can open the PDF, copy and paste it into your drawing, and it will come out a lot clearer than if you just copy and paste this. So any problems, as always, do get in touch, but this should take you through. Now your 3 gate valve handle designs should not look like this and should not look like this. They should look like something else. This one has been done deliberately because it's not a very good solution, and this one is a very simple, inelegant solution. So you can work on doing some other things.